in order for us to make things go more efficiently, I'd like a show of hands. Who are here for the committee appointments? Do we have?
A lot of people. Okay.
Okay. All right, maybe we could get the non-contested ones out of the way right away. Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense. All right, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a presentation about revenue for our city. And that could take about a half an hour. And if you would like to wait downstairs, we have plenty of seats. And then if you're coming back up for the budget workshop, it should be in about a half an hour, and then you could come back up, and you wouldn't have to be in this room if you wanted to wait down there. Might be more comfortable for those standing. So there's that option.
And there's a television down there, so you can monitor what's happening at the meeting, and then when it's time, you can just come right up the stairs.
Yeah, we'll give you time to come back up. So we'll announce it. So that's an option for you. Okay, so with that, let's do a roll call.
Councilmember Martinez?
Here. Councilmember
Medina?
Here.
Councilmember Pats?
Here.
Vice Mayor Bowders?
Here.
And Mayor Donahue?
Here. Okay, let's begin our budget workshop on revenue by Mr. Tim Seifert of NBS.
Mayor, I believe the next item on the agenda is approval of the final agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Bowders, seconded by Councilmember Pats. Councilmember Martinez?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Pats?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bowders?
Aye.
And Mayor Donahue?
Aye. Any ex parte communications?
Public comment?
Oh, yes, excuse me. Public comment for consent items or items not on the agenda. Okay, seeing none. Ex parte communications?
None.
None.
Okay, study session budget workshop.
Mr. Mayor, if I can introduce our speaker, Tim Seifert is a managing director with NBS in San Francisco, which is a consulting firm working exclusively for local government agencies on various revenue enhancement mechanisms. Tim has 2 decades of experience working with public agencies all over California. He has addressed audiences at the League of California Cities and Special District Association and others, and he has authored numerous articles on revenue topics. With that, I think we'll go ahead and ask Mr. Seifert to get started. Thank you.
Okay. All right, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm going to have I'm hoping a very concise discussion on revenue. This can actually be an all-day topic, but I really condensed it down to areas that I think will be of most interest to all of you here at the city of Emeryville. So that my agenda here is to just quickly give the sort of context. Why are we here? What's the discussion about? Mention the study update that was done, talk about politics and the approvals of various revenue measures, discuss some particular revenue options that might make sense for you all, and really then talk a little bit about what's going on in some of your neighboring cities and answer questions. Sound good?
Sounds good.
So, the context, why are we here? Well, cities operate on revenue, of course, and since Prop 13 is now almost 40 years old, that has constrained local government revenue. And we had Prop 218, we've had Prop 26, all of which to constrain revenue. It used to be years and years ago, most cities got most of their revenue from property tax. I note in your budget that you're down below 5% of your total revenues comes from property tax. Obviously a very different landscape than you had 40, 50 years ago. So what happens then is there's a lot of discussion, a lot of need to figure out revenues of a city, right? So we're talking about revenues tonight. I'm not talking about managing the budget, but the revenue side. We did, though, within the last 12 months, our firm actually worked on your fees and updated your fee study so that you can ensure that you're getting cost recovery on many of the fees that you charge and not bleeding money, if you will, on that front. All of this discussion, of course, is going to be predicated on most of the items that we're going to discuss with revenues tonight because of Prop 13, because of 218, 26. They need approvals. So there's politics involved, and what does your community want to support? And I'm going to give some examples of what is being supported in some of the neighboring communities. Before I go too far, though, I want to be real clear on something that there's a difference between financing and funding. So financing is like a mortgage. You know, you get out a certain amount of money and you finance an asset, whether it's City Hall or a new police station or you know, some other brick and mortar. So there's the capital side and then there's the ongoing maintenance. I'm largely going to focus on the ongoing budget and funding, but there's obviously interplay with capital infrastructure, and sometimes there's both, right? You need to build something and then maintain it. So this busy chart has a lot of stuff on there, but I'll try to distill it down to try to put these in somewhat of a priority order of discussion for options for revenue for the city. So there are various general or special taxes that can be enacted to support revenue, and you already have a number of them operating in your city. You know, you have the sales tax, you have transient occupancy tax, TOT, you have utility users tax, which is the UUT, you have transfer tax, those kinds of things. Obviously there's some of the budding other taxes are cannabis, soda, and those kind of things. Important thing here that they can be used for a variety of public services, so that ongoing maintenance, if you will. But you'll notice that there's approval thresholds involved with all of them. If you go for a general tax, basically the politics are you're saying, trust us, we'll spend the money wisely, and you're asking for a general tax, that's a majority approval. So a lower hurdle. If you're going for a special tax, saying we only want to use this additional sales tax, let's say, for public safety, we're going to earmark it, that then goes into the bucket of special tax, which then requires a 2/3 approval. So a higher threshold, obviously, to get to that point. There's another method that has been used. There's definitely philosophical differences on whether to use it or not, but it is still in use in California, is what they call the A-B approach. So you ask the voters, should we approve a general tax? So you have that 50% approval, and then the measure B right behind it would say, if this tax is approved, shall we spend it largely on public safety or parks or whatever service is a priority. So you stick at that 50% approval, but you have a measure that directs how the money should be spent. Obviously, talk to the city attorney when you do those kinds of things, but that is a valid approach. So we have the general or special taxes, and again, the list is there. The other option that we've actually discussed a couple of times in the last few years with the city is a landscape maintenance district, which is a form of an assessment district. Assessment districts have been around in California for over 100 years. They have challenges, certainly, but they do have their place, and they're pretty active in California today. You can do maintenance, you can do some limited capital, you can maintain parks and landscaping and lighting and that kind of thing. There is a detailed engineer's report that has to be done, and you have to document benefit, and you'll recognize some of that language because that's a PBID, right? The Emeryville round is also an assessment district. So that's why we have an elaborate formula and a lot of fiscal engineering, financial engineering, whatever you want to call it, that we have to go through to form an assessment district. So that's sort of option number 2. Option number 3 sounds like option number 1, but it is very different. It's a parcel tax. So that's literally, you know, $10, $50, $100 a year on each and every parcel in the city, or some formula that might tax larger parcels more than smaller parcels. By that, because it's a parcel tax, California law requires that to be a special tax. So you can't have a majority approval parcel tax. You automatically are going into the 2/3 approval category. And I'll show a number of examples, cities around here who have passed those. And you might recall Measure AA, the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority, that was passed not too long ago. That was a special tax as well, which achieved 2/3 approval when you counted in all the voters in the 9 Bay Area counties. Quite a bit of flexibility with the parcel tax. You can fund public safety, you can fund parks, you can fund Bay restoration, as we just saw. You can, in Marin County, there's a number of parcel taxes. Alameda has a number. Albany, Union City, you know, a lot of cities around here have those, and I'll give some examples in a couple minutes here. The second half of this table, a number of different things. You're probably familiar with the general obligation bonds, which is GO bonds. This goes back to that financing, though, that I talked about. This is not ongoing pay-as-you-go. This is if you want to construct a new facility, a fire station, or you know, rec center, or something like that. You can go with that. That still requires a 2/3 voter approval, and that tinkers with, if you will, the property tax rate that your property tax owners pay. That's a general obligation bond. There's also assessment district, 1913, 1915 Act, literally been around since then, 100 some years. Those are largely for infrastructure as well, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. Similar to a landscape and lighting is this, what's called a benefit assessment district, which is the 1982 Act, so been around since 1982. That's similar to the landscape and lighting, but is more earmarked towards flood control and some street lighting and street maintenance. Again, and it's an assessment district, so you are bound up by a lot of the assessment law, like the PBID, like the Emeryville go-around, that you have to go through a lot of machinations, if you will, to make that work legally and consistent with sort of generally accepted practices in California. The last on the list, and again I will give some examples, is a CFD, a Community Facilities District. This, by its very nature, is very similar to the parcel tax. It has a couple of other little bells and whistles that make it appealing for certain municipalities, but at the end of the day, it's another type of parcel tax, and it again, at this point, is a 2/3 approval. There's been a number of bills introduced in Sacramento that may change that 2/3 approval for parcel taxes down to 55% for certain things, but at this point, they are not the law of the land. So we're still looking at 2/3 approval for any of these types of parcel taxes. So to give some more concrete examples of some of these things that I'm talking about here, the city of Alameda, obviously right nearby, has a number of those CFDs that I mentioned, also using landscape maintenance districts. Albany, just up the road here, has a number of parcel taxes. I don't even recall how many. I want to say there are 6 now. They just passed a new one in November that got about 70% yes vote to largely fix their sidewalks, which was a real goal for the city there, was to fix a lot of failing sidewalks. So that did pass. It's a certain amount per parcel citywide that goes into funding that. They have a public safety one. They have a number of parcel taxes for different things like that. They also have a couple of older landscape and lighting districts that fund parks and that kind of thing. Union City down the road, very similar again, has CFDs, has landscape maintenance districts, and they also have a couple of examples here of parcel taxes, the 2/3 approval that I mentioned. So they have a paramedic tax, and they also have sort of a cousin to it, a public safety services tax. They also have, these are more fee-for-service type thing, but they have a number of charges that go on the tax bill for various services. The one thing that I will mention that wasn't going in any detail tonight to be more concise is there is a property-related fee that could be used for storm drain. I don't know that that's really a huge issue for you as the city, but I'm happy to answer questions on that if you like. El Cerrito, again, another neighbor, has a landscape and lighting district. And they also have that property-related fee for storm drain that I mentioned, and then the swim center special tax, which was approved a few years ago, that is dedicated to their swim center. So a very particular use, parcel tax, 2/3 approval.
So, Tim, that swim center tax, is that an ongoing tax, or was it up to a certain point to rehabilitate the swim center?
I believe that one goes in perpetuity. It was originally formed to pay off some bonds that did the brick and mortar construction, but as I understand it, it morphs into an ongoing maintenance tax, if you will. And that's the flexibility of a parcel tax or a CFD, is that it can sort of, morph, if you will, and do both capital and ongoing services. So flexibility there.
Thank you.
I tried to distill, and obviously I'm being, very presumptuous here, but tried to distill down from some conversations that we've had with city staff and what have you about some of the top ideas that you're looking at in terms of your budget and looking at the next couple of years. Is the public safety, you could look at a general tax or a special tax, mentioning what I talked about in terms of the way those are approved and whether or not they're earmarked or not. So that could be, additional TOT, hotel tax, or sales tax, or that kind of thing. For general revenues, of course, a general tax makes sense. It's a 50% approval, so it's easier to get approved within your community. But both of those, obviously, there's politics involved, and everybody in the community that is going to be voting is going to weigh in on whether or not they think that's a priority or not. In the park arena, you could do a general tax. You could do a special tax, for that matter. The Greater Vallejo Recreation District, we recently helped them renew their parcel tax that's going to go on for another 15 years that does, a variety of parks and rec type services. Or you can look at that landscape and lighting special assessment district that I mentioned. So, they really didn't want to hear what I had to say. So the revenue is hard. We have to be proactive in California all the time. If you're familiar with Beacon Economics, Christopher Thornburg, I just heard him speak the other day. Now is the time to think about revenues for all municipalities in California. While times are good, it's a lot harder when times are bad. But we have to be proactive. We are constrained by Prop 13 and 218 and 26. These are some options that we have, and in a very brief nutshell, that's my quick overview. So I'm happy to entertain questions or elaborate more on the areas that you'd like to go into.
Are there any questions from the dais here?
No.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim.
You're very welcome.
We are scheduled to go to our closed session right now, and we will probably make this as quick as we can.
And all the folks in the audience. The presentation of Part 2 of the budget workshop will be provided by Susan Shea, our Finance Director, as well as Cindy Montero, our Assistant City Manager. This is an important next step in our 2-year budget adoption process, as the City Council will be considering any adjustments to city services and related budgetary implications. I'd like to note that public comment was also received, submitted by the president of SEIU Emeryville chapter. The document covers the general approach to balancing the budget, as well as specific alternative proposal to budgeting and programming for the ECDC Child Development Center. We appreciate the proposals and look forward to the opportunity to further explore with the employee representatives these proposals. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. At the June 6 meeting, our consultants presented the general fund 5-year projections and pension funding requirements. I will provide an overview about pension costs, expenditures, and revenues, reserves, and budget gap. The information will be helpful to those who did not attend the June 6 meeting. At the March budget workshop, the City Council affirmed the city's commitment for sound financial management, and the City Council did not recommend any changes to the current financial policies. At the meeting, the Council also directed staff to hire an actuary to provide options on how to invest the city's $13 million pension reserve. In December 2016, CalPERS announced that the investment return will be lower from 7.5% to 7%. That means increase in pension costs for cities. It is very likely that the investment return will be lower to 6% over the next 20 years. In 5 years, the city's annual pension contribution will double to $6 million from $3 million. This pie chart presents the 2017-18 general fund expenditures by program. As you can see, police and fire comprise more than 50% of the general fund expenditures. The cumulative expenditure growth from 2017 to 2021 is projected to be 20%. This chart presents the revenue growth. The cumulative growth from 2017 to 2021 is projected to be 5%, much lower than the 20% expenditure growth. The city's top 3 revenue sources are sales tax, hotel tax, and business license tax. And these revenues account for over 50% of total general fund revenues. These revenues are very susceptible to economic downturns or recessions. To mitigate risk, the city has built up strong reserves over the years. This table presents the general fund reserves. If the city does not take any actions to reduce expenditures and increase revenues, the 50% economic uncertainty reserve target will be reduced to 45% in 2021. The general fund reserves will be reduced by $15 million by 2021. We need to be mindful in using reserve funds. We should not draw into reserves unless it's absolutely necessary. This chart presents the general fund budget gap. The projected budget gap is $1.5 million in 2017 and 2018, and $3.2 million in 2018-19. In 2021, the projected deficit will exceed $6 million. This concludes my short presentation, and Cindy will present the cost reduction options.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Staff is mindful that the current personnel and program cost structures are financially unstable. So at the beginning, when we started the new 2-year budget process, department heads were asked to identify 10% cuts to reduce the budget gap and identify feasible options to achieve a balanced budget for fiscal year 17-18 and 18-19. We will be looking at these when we review that budget balancing chart that was in your packet. I'm just going to give you the timeline. So tonight we're asking for council's recommendations and maybe alternative proposals on the budget balance chart. We're going to bring this information to the Finance Committee for review and recommendations at the end of June or early July. We'll bring those back to the City Council and ask for the City Council's final direction on July 11th. City Council will again be able to meet July 25th and or August 1st with all recommendations. And in September, the City Council approval of the budget for the fiscal years 17-18 and 18-19 will be presented. So now we're going to go into the balancing budget chart. So Susan's going to pull this up. And what we want to do here is to start at the beginning and take each department, just give you a quick overview, and then you can ask for staff comment, public comment, and then if you want, do staff discussion on each department. That way people can come up and give public comment on each section. So the first department that we're going to talk about is the City Council. Let's get it up there. And we know the City Council engagement on professional organizations, so we're taking a deduction from the membership and dues of $3,400, and there's another deduction for City Council on the education and training. That would be your travel, conference, and meetings. You'd be attending fewer conferences, meetings. There would be a small budget remaining for the for local attendance of conferences and travel. So if you'd like to take public comment on the City Council reductions at this time, and then discuss and give us a little feedback on that. You want to do it each one, or do you want us to just go down
I
the
think we
list?
should just cumulatively go
Yeah.
through it, and then so people can look at
Okay.
the overall.
And that
picture.
is fine. In the city manager's department, we're looking at 1 FTE, a reduction in 1 FTE. That position would, in that reduction of that 1 FTE, would eliminate support for key services such as the PBID, ECCL, fire contract, and new services and policy development. There's also a deduction of $20,000 to support, in support of the neighborhood association programs, and that would just eliminate the city effort in favor of grassroots organizing.
Could you please avoid using acronyms?
Yes.
Okay,
For everyone's
sure.
clarification in the room.
FTE is full-time equivalent, a full-time equivalent employee. And also, just for the audience, clarification, the amounts that you see in parentheses, of course, are the amounts that would be reduced, that would be
Yes.
cut from the budget.
Yes. And the PBID is actually the Emeryville round tax assessment that is put on people's tax bills for the Emeryville round. So, and I think we know what the ECCL is, the Emeryville Center of Community Life. So we're on to the city attorney. Can I say 1 FTE now that we've clarified it? That would be a paralegal services. That would be less response to legal support requests if we were to take that budget
That's a
decrease.
currently unfilled position.
That's a currently unfilled position, that's correct. In the finance department, we're talking about a 0.7 FTE, so that would approximately be 83,787 in the first year, and I'm not going into the second year. I mean, it's up on the board so people can see. That impacts support to payroll and other accounting activities, and so that is a shared resource between the finance department. The 18-19 reduction is lower due to the reorganization of the full year cost that's going to be shifted from the HR department, which is human resources. In the human resource department, 1.3 FTEs. Again, there's a $95,225 amount associated with that. This would impact the timeline for staff recruitment, reduction in employee engagement events. It might cause delay in new employee onboarding, and again, there's some shared staff with the finance in this here. So we are going on to the community development and planning, building and economic development and housing. So there's a few here. One is to take $134,000 in our 17-18 and allocate those costs to the general plan maintenance fund. There's another one to allocate costs to the general plan maintenance fund. The planning commission stipend, which is $5,015 for the first fiscal year. There's a permit counter services, which those are contracted out. That's a WC3 contract. We would reduce that contract by $19,413. That would be the applicants, the counter hours would go from weekly to bi-weekly, and so there'd be a less availability to applicants if we were to take the $19,000 off of their contract. And then there's another community development, economic development and housing. That's 1 FTE. And that is for $130,725. The impact on that would be the administrative support for the labor standards would be reduced, and those would have to have reassigned duties to other staff. So we're on to, and if there's any questions as we're going through this for any of the department heads, so like Charlie has, if you have a question on this, you can go ahead and just ask.
I'm sorry, I do have a question. So Charlie, for the permit counter services, changing the hours from weekly to bi-weekly, can you enumerate what challenges that could create?
Well, let me explain a little bit further what that is. We have structural engineers from our consultants, WC3, West Coast Code Consultants, and they are available to the public on Tuesdays and Thursdays, typically by appointment, although they take walk-ins too, to the extent they have availability. We have one senior structural engineer who has been with us for many, many years, who is more expensive than the other structural engineer, but who is also very competent. We have both of them on Tuesdays, and we have the more junior one on Thursdays. This proposal would take the more senior structural engineer and have him come in only every other Tuesday as opposed to every Tuesday. So on Tuesdays we would have, on alternate Tuesdays we would have both of them, and on the other Tuesdays we would have the junior structural engineer, and then on Thursdays we would have the junior structural engineer, as we still do. By the way, that's not his title. He just has less seniority than the other one. So it would mean that the senior structural engineer would be available to the public only on Tuesdays every other week as opposed to every week.
Thank you.
So are their skill sets different?
Not particularly. It's just the level of experience.
And so their bill rate is different?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we're still on the Community Development Department. There's a reduction that we're proposing of 1 FTE. That service that FTE provides is support to small business programs in the Arts Center. The impact on that would be a significant reduced support to small business programs and the Arts Center. And then also in Community Development, the Townsend contract, there would be a reduction of $10,000 in their contract. The impact on that would be reduced grant support, and we're going to skip the Washington, D.C. trip.
Yeah. Did we ever get the number? I think this was asked at the last time about how much grants they actually generate.
Well, this is actually not a reduction in service. It's just been giving us a contract for less without reducing.
Oh, so this is the Townsend contract, and this is actually later on in the meeting tonight for you to approve that slight reduction. And the clarification can come from Charlie, but I understand that there are regular staff meeting coordination opportunities that they will not participate in. So Charlie, if you want to expand on that.
I'm not asking what services change. I reiterated a question that was asked previously. How much money do they bring in?
Yeah, we don't have that exact number. They help us to identify grants that may be available to us. And we have a monthly grant meeting that they have in the past participated in. So in the future we'll be participating with them, basically, or communicating with them basically offline about these grant opportunities. But I'm sorry, I don't have an exact number of what grants they have successfully gotten for us. It's been a collaborative effort, so I'm sorry I don't have that.
We don't have a metric of success for them?
Charlie, if the cost-benefit analysis is something that we can present even at the next council meeting, it sounds like that would be beneficial.
Right, we can put that together.
Thank you, Councilman.
So we are on to the Child Development Program. The reduction of 25 FTEs for the Emeryville Child Development Center, and that would be a savings in the first year of $474,293. and we would discontinue the service delivery by the city. Right now, that program, they do have 2 management positions that are filled by consultants. We are on now to the police department. There are quite a few in the police. The first would be dispatch services, the reduction of 10 FTEs. We would change the service delivery model. We would consolidate possibly dispatch services with another agency. There's also one FTE, which is the crime analysis services, with a amount associated with that. One FTE of 87,118. This would lower our level of response to citizens and shift crime analysis to new CAT software system. Also in police, there is the police services, one FTE, reduction of 179,353. This would reduce support for police services and increase overtime. Then you see there's a $80,000 increase in overtime below that. Again, in the police department, one FTE, that would be the fleet parking, abandoned vehicle, and equipment management services. This would shift the fleet and equipment management to the services they provide to management staff. It would reduce the service levels in parking and abandoned vehicle management. Again, police, dispatch services. This one I think maybe Susan should explain, where you're seeing now an addition of 200,000. So could you explain that?
Yeah, the 200,000 is one-time technology conversion costs.
And police department, the K-9 program, that's a $20,000.
I'm sorry. I have a question about the dispatch services. Do we know if these are real numbers or anywhere close to real numbers? Have we looked at? Do we have any idea?
Good evening. They're just estimates at this time. It'll take a deep dive to come up with actual dependable numbers, but they're in the ballpark based on funding formulas that I could find from other agencies.
Thank you.
Did I mention the K-9 program from the police department, a $20,000 savings that would go towards the PD? There's the impact on this would be the savings in the training, maintenance, and special pay, increase officer safety risk, and reduce response time to certain incidents. And then there's the animal control services right now that we contract out with Piedmont of $42,058, and that would reduce service levels and rely on county support for animal services in the city. The Public Works Department, that's a half of an FTE, 49,881. That would impact the allocation of staff time on the capital fund to more adequately reflect the program activities. So again, Susan, you're taking that the fees, and Susan can best talk to how.
So this is an allocation of costs from the general fund to the capital fund, which is supported by tax income and revenue.
There'd be in Public Works also one FTE. This is a city facilities maintenance service. This would delay city facilities maintenance projects. The implementation of the computerized work order management system, that would also be delayed. In Public Works, the landscape and maintenance services, that's one FTE. A portion of this is allotted to the Marina Fund. That would be the $87,644 is the amount of reduction for the 17-18 budget.
Can I ask a question? The landscape and maintenance fund, what is the distinction between that and the contract that we'll see later this evening for maintenance services?
These are the services that are provided by city staff in the parks and the other medians that city works on directly, as opposed to the landscaping contractor who has another set of the facilities around the city.
Responsibilities.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So we are now on to the Community Services Department. We are giving the activity guide and the city news saying that we can actually do an electronic version of this versus mailing it out and printing it. That would give us savings of $18,667. Also in the Community Services Department, there would be 1.3 FTEs in the youth services and special events. What that would do, that would reduce citywide community events to 3 main events. It would reorganize the responsibilities and duties to staff, and the division would not be able to increase services or programs to youth services beyond fiscal year 16-17 service levels. And then also in community services, the adult service division, 1.7 FTEs, the savings of $109,069. That would, the impact would be reduction of senior center classes and trips. The division again would not be able to increase services or programs to adult services beyond fiscal year 16-17 service levels. And Susan, do you want to just talk about the final numbers?
So our reductions exceeded our annual deficit at this point. We want to make sure that we have enough for the council to make your recommendations. And also some of the costs are estimates, such as the dispatch contract. If the actual saving is much lower than what we expected, the extra reductions will go away.
Mr. Mayor, also just to note that if the reductions as presented do not fulfill the required reductions needed, and the council does not approve all of these, the staff stands ready to go back and look further at other types of reductions and to bring them forward at the next meeting.
Any clarifying questions before we take public comment?
No.
No.
Okay, we're going to start for public comment on this budget workshop here.
I'm going to make a quick note on public comment. We have a lot of public comment cards already filled out, so I'm going to call these in order and that they were received. If you have not already filled out a public comment card, please grab one up there. It'll be passed up to me, and I will call them in order. I'm going to call everyone in groups of 3 so that you can start making your way up as soon as you are called, so that I know you guys all have families, and we want to make this go as quickly as possible for everyone.
And so I'm going to limit your speaking time to 2 minutes.
All right. The first...
What?
Just a point of clarification.
Yeah.
Will there be other opportunities to speak to these issues? Some of us are just getting this document today with these, so I just want to know, will there be other opportunities?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the first 3 people that I'm going to call up are Athena Honore, Eric Kozak, and Alana Esposito. Please make your way forward.
And please state your name when you come up to speak. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alona Esposito. I'm an accounting and finance
Could you get the mic a little closer to you?
Yes. Hi, my name is Alona Esposito. I'm an accounting and finance consultant in the area. I'm here as a parent today to speak on behalf of keeping ECDC in the budget. From a financial perspective, I was just noticing that the reductions exceed the projected deficit for $332,000 for 2017-18 fiscal year. At a minimum, that almost meets the amount that ECDC would be cut from this year. I don't know if that starts in August or if that starts in August 18, but all of us parents here would be very concerned to find out that the school year matches up with the fiscal year and that the funding would be cut in this year. It really doesn't give any of us enough time, as well as the staff, to figure out what to do. I think you can see that with the outpouring of support and everybody that has come here to show how much they care about the center, that it is clearly a vital part of the community, and that is something to be considered, that it's not just like, you know, an improvement on a park. This is really the lives of a lot of people here that are at stake, and the livelihood of the staff, which is, they are amazing, and all the parents and children that, you know, are involved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kozak.
Hi, Eric Kozak. That was my wife, so I'll say that, yeah, exactly what she said. But to also add on to it, I just want to note that the staff has lent themselves to incredibly helping our daughter develop in leaps and bounds, and also like helping with some of the tougher developmental things that we've encountered. And it's been a blessing to have them, and I think that it would be very short-sighted to get rid of such an asset in the community.
Great.
Thank you.
Alana Esposito, is that you?
I'm Athena Honore. I think I was called just before her. My name, again, Athena Honore. I'm the widow who emailed you. I sent a rather verklempt email to all of you. I hope you don't mind. My boys are here too, but I'm glad that they are not here to talk about this part. Actually, I'm here, like all of these folks, to ask you please not to close ECDC. I really depend on it. The other daycares that I have looked at have had broken and dirty facilities and toys, family folks, family drama. The son's moved back in, and his big TV is on the wall now, and all the kids are watching TV, and the grumpy girlfriend is stuck watching the kids, and just really unprofessional and unsafe. And those were the places with good recommendations. Whereas ECDC is professional, and I really think it's a gem. In our time of trouble, my wife passed away last August, and so we've been in a sort of family crisis where ECDC has been a real support for us, real stability, structure, providing continuity, and a loving, supportive environment for my boys, Ernesto and Jacinto, who are 4 years old, while we kind of got ourselves back together after that. So I really depend on the center. My family does too. I'm very concerned that if ECDC goes away, that this is my emotional pitch to you guys, that my boys are going to learn that everything they love goes away, that you can't count on anything and there's no continuity in the world. And, that's what they say, ages 1 to 5 are where you're the most moldable, right? Everything adds up to what you understand of the world. So, there are people here who have been through some rough patches, and this place helps with that. The teachers are amazing. Part of the reason they're amazing is because they have a good job and benefits, and they stay here, and there's low turnover, and their experience has really allowed them to be kind of rocks of support and love in a totally professional and appropriate way for my kids. So please, we would really appreciate anything you can do. I don't envy you the position you're in. I understand the choices that you have to make, that you have to cut somewhere. Please don't cut ECDC. I hope you can find somewhere else to do it. I thank you for the hard work that you're doing, and we would really, really hope to be able to keep going to the center next year and beyond.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ben Shirey, Pamela Pugh, and Jacina Duckworth.
I don't know if we heard the first name.
Who was the first one? Ben?
Ben Shirey. And if you are out of the room with your child when your name is called, I'll set this aside and we can call you at the end as well. So, okay. I'll set that aside. Pamela Pugh or Jacina Duckworth, are either of you in the room? Hey.
Hi, I'm Jacina Duckworth. I am a former student of ECDC, and also my mom is an educator at ECDC. I'm here on behalf of ECDC and the ones who are affected by the choices. I want you guys to know that ECDC is not a place where parents come and just drop off their kids and don't expect anything, but ECDC is a community where of learning, where children are here to learn communication skills, math skills, and life lessons. That also, I am a high schooler at Emory High, and that many students at Emory High have been at ECDC, and that they have enjoyed their time there, and that they have been educated and have been taught to communicate with others and to live life as enjoyable. And I was raised at ECDC with the wonderful educators, and that they have taught me to believe in myself and to speak for what I believe in. And I appreciate this opportunity and the struggles that you guys are bringing us here together and letting these young children who are here today to understand to speak for what you believe in, and to also speak up for what you know is right, and to fight for what is right. Thank you.
All right, not seeing Pamela Pugh or Ben Shirey, I'm going to move on to the next three: Lisa Pine Schronmaker, Alexander Enriquez, and Mia Scanlon.
Hello, hi. My name is Lisa, and my son Rowan has been a student at ECDC for the last 4 years. ECDC was recommended to us by some neighbors in the 94608 area code several years ago. Their son had been at ECDC for 2 or 3 years at that point and graduated shortly after we started. And I also, in turn, recommended ECDC to someone you just heard speak a few years ago, and they are still happy there, and they like it so much that they have come here also in order to speak for the center itself. So we're talking at least 6 years of people that have been so satisfied with ECDC, and they trust their children at ECDC so much that they are recommending it by word of mouth and showing up here today to speak. And so this is a little bit longer than many of you have held your positions, I know. So you may have heard only in more recent events at the center, but it's been incredibly consistent. We've been really happy with it. I am sure that my son is at a developmental and sociologically adept place in order to enter kindergarten. We have the luxury of going to Thornhill next year. I am not worried that he will be behind at all. And as you know, that's a school where you may have a lot of students who had better, more luxurious preschools to attend. There's been, it hasn't always been super smooth, but I've been really, really happy with the way ECDC has responded to any concerns that I've had, how truthful they've been, and how forthcoming, and how they've worked so hard to correct any issues that we might have. The hardest thing has been, of course, the incredible turnover rate of the center management. It's the center manager itself. We've had at least one manager for every year. And last year, I'm just going to say, we were without a manager for over 4 months. That is insane. But you have the same people who went through that here today. And so, thank you.
My name's Alexander Enriquez. I didn't prepare a speech because I wanted to look at you guys, see. My daughter has been going to ECDC for about a year. It's been a rough process. This would probably be her 5th school if you guys decide to end up closing it. I've been an Emeryville resident since 2011. I work here for Bank of America. I own a small business here. My daughter also attends this school. Besides the numbers-wise, I know you guys know that 80 kids will, if you guys cut it, will no longer be a part of this amazing program. Also, 20 amazing teachers that my daughter adores will be lost in the program. My daughter, we went through a separation with me and her mother, and it was hard to find a place where my daughter can be herself and really open up. And this place has taught her how to love, how to look at people and not judge people by race. My daughter's Filipina, she's Colombian, she's Moroccan, and she's white. So if you look around this room today, it is a mix and diversity that people and my children, they don't look at race. And living today, you see the separation and everything that's going on. When she goes to the school, that all goes away. And when I walk into the school and I say hi to these teachers, it's the same feeling. So if you guys do cut that program out, just think, I know you guys have your budgets, and obviously I did look at the pie chart and I do finance. 3% of that was a budget from ECDC. There's got to be a place where you guys can cut that somewhere else. So I'm here today just to say that I highly oppose this. Just think about the kids, and you talk about bringing families into Emeryville. Families come to Emeryville because it's diverse, it's in the middle. You guys are losing out on the culture if you guys take out ECDC. That's all I got to say.
Hi there. My name is Mia Scanlon. I sent you guys a very desperate email 12:30 this morning. And I'm here in support of ECDC because I've been an ECDC parent since 2012. My daughter graduated from the program. She's now 7. My son, who's 4, was practically raised by these teachers since he was 9 months old. So my husband and I are transplants to the Bay Area. We are involved in ECDC because ECDC got involved with us. When we came here, we didn't have a support system. We just had each other. We had small children. We felt lost. The teachers became our initial support. The parents in the class then became our family. My daughter is 7, but I still keep in touch with all the parents that we met when she was 2.5. We meet each other in swim lessons, community events, and birthday parties. I don't think that you guys recognize that ECDC draws young families like us into Emeryville. I was that crazy, anxious mom who visited 20 preschools and grilled directors and teachers about standards and care in their facility. I ultimately decided ECDC because it had everything that I prioritized. The highest on that list was the diversity. Now, Zoe made friends from all over the world that she met through ECDC. And the center is not a niche group of very privileged children in the Bay Area, like some of the private school institutions are. She gets a really good mix, and I feel very privileged. She's also Black, white, Korean. She gets to meet other children who looks like her, who are well blended. She feels part of the community. So when she transitioned into kindergarten, she was ready. She was prepared. I lingered a bit, and she told me to go away. She assured me that she was going to be okay. And I contribute the teachers at ECDC for making her the strong, independent young lady that she is. So I would like you guys to consider my daughter's journey, my family's journey, when you consider the fate of ECDC. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Alex Vasquez, Kaman Gadaji, and Carissa Justice. I apologize in advance for butchering names.
Hey there, I'm Alex Vasquez. I have a daughter, a 3-year-old, that goes to ECDC. 4-year-old, she's been there for 3 years. Ms. Martinez, you asked a gentleman earlier, what is the key to retaining and attracting families? For me and the majority of families in the Bay Area, a top priority is high-quality childcare. Emeryville Child Development Center addresses the need for local child care. Most of the families are from Emeryville or from 94608. Excuse me, I'm a little nervous. This is an in-demand child care center. Closing ECDC would mean one more reason to consider leaving the area amongst high housing costs and other child care centers that aren't nearly as good. High quality child care providers, staff of ECDC are amazing. They are caring, they're creative, they engage with us. They teach me how to be a parent. I had no idea what I was doing. My partner had no idea what we were doing. They taught us how to be caring and take care of her as well as they do. Many of your staff have been with ECDC for well over 15 years. That's your staff. Closing the center would mean that you would willingly terminate high-performing, long-term staff and members of your community. This is a high-quality, community-based child care center. I've randomly met people in other parts of the state who were in the center 20 years ago and still remember it fondly. You have the choice to meet the needs of your community and keep ECDC open, and I hope you do so.
Hi, my name is Carmen Guadani. This is my son, Luca. Go say hi. Just say hi. What's on there? He said he wanted to talk. Sorry. We live in the 94608 area code, zip code, just across the border in Oakland. And my son's been a student at ECDC since the beginning of the year. I don't have a lot of family in this area either, and the one thing that really drew me to ECDC was the community that came along with it. The staff, the current administration, and the families that are there now have, totally welcomed us. My son is thriving since he's been there. We really love it, and it's really important to us. We love the teachers. They love their jobs, and that really makes a difference in the care that our kids get. And, I know a lot of people who've had their children there from age 3 months till they start kindergarten, and that's hopefully what we're going to do. So I really hope you consider what everybody has to say and the showing that's made it here. Sorry. And keep ECDC alive. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, not seeing Carissa Justice. We'll move on to Mira Roseman, Kelby, mononym like Cher apparently, and Jennifer Lynn.
My name is Mira Roseman. I've been a parent of ECDC children since 2009. So my eldest son is 9. He's in 3rd grade now, just finished. And then my youngest son, he's been at ECDC since he was 4 months old. So this is unfortunately not the first time we've been here. I know that to the City Council, this looks like an appealing option. It's a big line item. I get that. I think we all understand that. We all have budgets. Like when I see my budget looks tight, I think of what I can cut. Cable is usually the first thing to look at, but usually it requires harder cuts than that. So I think the important thing that I feel about this is it. The benefits of the center, you guys may not understand them, you may not realize them, but for these people, for this community, for the families that you'll affect, if you close this center, you have no idea. If you have small children, you know how hard it is to find childcare. And in the Bay Area, it is extremely competitive, and it is extremely hard sometimes to hang with it. So I think you've heard those stories from other people. My child graduates and goes to kindergarten next year, but the people who work there now at ECDC, Lois, Susan, the other teachers, they are great. The center is finally in a really, really good spot. They are a team of management that can really take this center really, really forward in great ways. They love the staff loves them, the kids love the staff. My son, when they talk about him going to kindergarten, he throws himself on the ground and cries because he doesn't want to leave Teacher V and Teacher Rose. So I'm just, so I don't have a dog in this fight anymore, but I think it's important that this city continue to offer this really, really valuable service to parents and families in the Emeryville area. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm here to talk about something else on the budget, but I'm not going to. This is Kelby. I'm not going to talk about that. I think this is, you guys should really prioritize what all these people are doing right now and why they're here. So I cede the rest of my time to anybody who needs it. Thank you.
I'm not seeing Jennifer Lynn. I'm going to call the next 3, Ahmed Riaz, Amanda, and Brian Carver.
Hi, my name is Ahmed Riaz. Can you guys hear me? Okay. I don't have anything prepared, but my daughter's the one that keeps running back and forth. And we try to keep her in the house. We moved to the Bay Area because we wanted to move to a place where we had a sense of diversity that made us feel comfortable, that made us feel like we could go outside and that our daughter could be in a place where she didn't feel afraid of who she was when she grew up. So we moved to the Bay Area, and we were really worried if we could afford daycare. And originally we thought we'd keep her in, and her mom could take care of her. But it was really tough because she wanted to be social. And eventually we felt really lucky that we found ECDC because it was a place where she could be herself. It was a place where she could communicate with other people. And every time we go there, I feel like it's a little secret that we found. You want to be up here? Okay. It's a little secret in Emeryville, because when I tell people I live in Emeryville, they're like, oh, you live at the IKEA? I'm like, no, I don't live at the IKEA. I live in this community that has schools. I live in this community where there are wonderful restaurants like Public Market. I live in this community where friends of mine will invite me to visit Pixar. But maybe this is the choice. The choice is, do you want to be just a big box store city where people come in and spend some dollars and leave? Or do you want to be a community where people live and families live? That's really your choice, sir. Okay, bye.
Hello, my name is Amanda. I live on 41st Street. I've lived in Emeryville since 1998. In the last 19 years, I have seen this city transform. When I moved here, there was no Bay Street, there was no IKEA, there was no Pixar, there was nothing really. There wasn't a lot going on in Emeryville. And it's been amazing to see this city change and thrive and flourish. And the most amazing part of it is seeing the same thing happen all over the Bay Area, you know, this huge economic growth. Somehow Emeryville has maintained the integrity to keep working class families, to keep families that have been here for generations. And part of that is the emphasis on community. I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional, but that is one of the reasons that we were drawn to ECDC as well. My husband and I have a 2-year-old. He was making a lot of noise earlier, so my husband took him to Rudy's. I was opening staff at Rudy's, by the way, so I definitely have a legacy here. And right now I'm in medical school. My husband is a full-time student at UC Berkeley. We could not do anything that we're doing without the support of ECDC. And I really want to reiterate how important the community aspect is that draws these families, and the fact that Emeryville has been able to maintain that draw and that community life obviously is a priority to the council as well as, you know, the members of the community with the recent opening of the Center for Community Life. But so I just wanted to put that forth and say that that is one of the reasons that this community has been able to maintain its integrity and not push all of these families that have been here for generations out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Donahue, members of the City Council. My name is Brian Carver. I'm an Emeryville resident in the Triangle area. My children, 12 and 9, attended ECDC from the time their ages could be measured in months. It is the same issue, different faces. I hope one day we have a City Council that does not need to learn this lesson. 8 years ago when we were here, there was a very different process. I want to talk to you about process and leadership tonight. Process, first, the parents at ECDC got a letter from the city manager 8 years ago. That didn't happen this time. Instead, we got surprised by an item on an agenda. That's no way to run city business. Then what happened in the ongoing discussion was the city realized they needed to approach this thoughtfully. They appointed a task force to study the issue. I was appointed and named chair of that task force. We came up with what we called the parent plan. It involved actually the parents agreeing to pay more. They wanted this so badly they said, hey, we'll do what it takes to raise revenue. It's one of the few items on your list that has a revenue lever. The city manager at that time recommended against that, recommended outsourcing. We've seen this before, and 5 city council members voted for the parent plan. I then served on the Emeryville Child Development Center committee since its inception, and I've also could measure the amount of time I've spent studying this budget in months. And there are ways to resolve this short of this solution. We've seen a city manager in the past try and make up bogus predictions that are overly conservative about what your budget gap is going to be. You don't have to listen to that. They're estimates. Instead, we want leadership from the people we elect in public office. We want you to have a vision. We want you to say, what kind of city do we want Emeryville to be? We want it to be one that cares about families. We want it to be one that cares about children. We want it to be one that invests in those things and says, you know what, city staff, you fucking figure it out, right? We've got the vision, and that's what we want from you. You tell them what to do. They don't tell you what to do. They don't present this chart to you and tell you to deal with it.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Lynn. I'm with the East Bay Alliance for a Sustainable Economy, and I just have to say, as a parent, a lot of parents in this room are really good at listening while there's lots of ambient noise around, so we've stuck with it, and I'm really proud that folks are here. I wanted to make two comments. Emeryville is a trailblazer in two key ways in my mind. One is in subsidizing and providing for this community at ECDC. The other has been in trailblazing on around minimum wage and passing a fair work week so that workers in retail and fast food can actually plan for their lives, plan for things like childcare. And so this is really key. I think it's key that Emeryville continues its commitment in both of those areas. We know retail workers who have had to drag their own children to the store, trying to hide them in a large big box store while they're working because they have no other choice. They have no other place to turn for high quality childcare, affordable childcare. So I really encourage you to both find a way to continue this community at ECDC and also make sure that labor standards enforcement is addressed in the city. Thank you.
All right, next three, Caitlin Nemura-Weingrow, Rob Arias, and Fran Cattell.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Nomura-Weingrow. I have a prepared statement. I would like to start off with a familiar quote. The moral test of government is how that government treats those who are in the dawn of life, the children. Hello, as I said, my name is Caitlin. I'm a working mother to 4-year-old Jack, who has been attending ECDC for almost 3 years, and my baby Arthur, who will hopefully begin attending ECDC in the fall, if it still exists. I frankly did not even consider looking at alternative care centers for Arthur because we are so happy with the level of care and professionalism at ECDC. So here we are in the city of Emeryville that is growing and improving every day, and we have made it our priority to say yes to developers building luxury condos. We say yes to big pharma, big biotech, and even big coffee. We are sitting on a veritable gold mine of potential business taxes. Yet, we feel the need to instead to say no to little children, all the kids out in the hall, all the children at ECDC. We say, no, we cannot provide you with simple care while your parents work. No, you cannot go to school, the school you love, and be nurtured by your amazing teachers who spend more time with you throughout the week than your own parents. And sure, we could privatize ECDC and contract out all the labor, but what would we be left with? I know parents like me would probably be left with a $50,000 annual bill for childcare that rivals my entire annual income, putting my ability to provide for my family at risk. I know we would be left with poor quality care that puts our children's health and safety at risk. Just last week, a 4-year-old boy in Arkansas was left in the back of a school bus on a hot day, forgotten by his teachers while his class attended a field trip. This was a corporate-run preschool with contract staff. Parents worry, and if the quality of care at ECDC suffers, I know I'll worry too. Just to finish up, I'm not sure where the priorities lie here, but I would like to ask for reprioritization that puts our smallest, most vulnerable citizens first, along with those who nurture their futures. I also have some printed copies of the 2016 Child Care Aware study for you to look over if you like. It has some interesting facts about the state of California and the state of child care in general.
Hi, Rob Arias, 13-year Park Avenue District resident. I have a 1-year-old son who's actually on the ECCL waiting list. Needless to say, I've spent a lot of time over the last year at play areas in our city talking to parents and talking to them here. I'm now realizing just how important the ECDC is to this community, what a hub it is, how integral it is to our community, how parents feel connected to other parents through this center. So I don't know if I'll actually ever get in. I've come up with a plan B just in case, but and I'd be thrilled to actually be admitted to the ECDC. You have some tough decisions to make, but you really want to make our city less family-friendly, less safe, making budget cuts to the EPD. I mean, we have crimes up 17%, so that would be very unpopular to make cuts to the EPD right now. In fact, if anything, you would want to increase staff. But it's important to acknowledge the reasons we're in this mess. Okay, for the last 2 years, the city council has been kind of reckless with the budget, okay? You just didn't plan ahead. You thought the gravy train would just never end. For the last 2 years, this council's priorities have not aligned with Emeryville's priorities. Now, to spend $500,000 on, and who knows how much staff time on Fair Work Week that nobody in this city is even aware of or thinks is a priority, I'm sorry, that's reckless. Whether you like it or not, the services like the ECDC are being paid for by sales tax. So you want to do something to further diminish sales tax? We're going to be looking at this again next year. The families in this room, they should be your priorities. They should be your priorities.
Hello. I'm Fran Quittel. I'm a resident and I'm a member of the Budget Advisory Committee where I've served for a number of years. This reminds me of the movie Dave, which I happen to love, where they're making a decision about the child care center and there's the president, Dave, saying, add the 3, carry the 1. So I want to say that many cities are making hard choices, and I appreciate our efforts to stay ahead of the curve. And these efforts have gone on, from my committee's perspective, for a number of years. This is not a surprise. We are in the world, and we have been marching forward to look at what's happening in the Bay Area and in our country and what we need to do in our community to really keep it going in this unique way that we have here. Professionally, I've spent about 30 years building companies as a recruiter. And I know when populations and projects are expanding, which is what's happening here, we have renters, we have owners, we have residents, we have workers, a population that doubles every day. Drastic cuts to staff can create utter havoc. And we have all heard tonight the many comments that have been made about ECDC and also the tough realities we need to face. Tough realities that we need to face, and we need to step up to facing those realities. I think Carolyn Lair's suggestion to do more research is prudent. In fact, I love it. And also, where cuts are made, for the city to come up with recommendations to its citizens to provide alternates that will effectively meet these really important needs. There are some areas that are just crucial. Thank you.
All right, final set of speaker cards up here. If you haven't gotten it in and you still want to speak, please pass it up to me. Judy Lowe's, Megan Way, Michael Lee or C, sorry, unclear, and Amber Evans.
Hi, I'm Jody Laus. I work and live in Emeryville, and my children go to school here. I'm a foster parent. And nobody else has spoken to it, but ECDC hosts 20 state-funded spots for kids who are fully funded to go to preschool. My daughter and I have been together since October, and we've been at ECDC the same amount of time. She's absolutely transformed there from a 3.5-year-old whose trauma didn't let her speak to someone who's in a stimulating environment, who feels safe, who learns to talk to everyone who's in that space. I love going to all Emeryville events pretty much as a single parent. Like, keeping everything within 1 mile is how my life works. Otherwise, how can I attend all my doctor's appointments, all of the social worker appointments that I need to do? I'm thrilled to be part of the community at ECDC. They've been so wonderful and supportive. We had to go through an IEP process at Emeryville Public School, and the teachers at ECDC hosted over 6 professionals who came in to watch us, or watch my girl in the classroom, and just really helped facilitate this whole process. And now they also host her speech therapy comes into the classroom, so that's been just really wonderful. And as a person in your community, I'm going to be here, and I really want the program for young children to continue on. I'm going to be sending my kids to public school here. And I just really think that entry level of having ECDC parents transition into being the Emeryville community parents at the kindergarten level and onward is a great thing. So thank you.
Thank you for being a foster parent.
Hi, my name is Megan Cody. Thank you to those of you. I wrote emails to a lot of you. Some of you wrote me back. Thank you. That's very appreciated. It's really nice to feel connected to the city officials that we help elect. So it's appreciated that you're taking your time to listen to all of us. I talked to you, Mr. Mayor, yesterday on the phone, and you were able to express to me that your daughter, I believe, or maybe both of your kids, went to ECDC 21 years ago, and we're all here because we want the opportunity to be able to say that about our own children in the future. To have a preschool, it becomes a center of our community as parents, and the thought of being able to walk my child to school, to be able to know the people in our neighborhood, creates a safe environment for everybody. And you know, the thought that 80 children could possibly not have a place to go to preschool in a couple months is crazy. I mean, the preschools are closed. There is no way to get your children into an acceptable preschool. And ECDC is more than an acceptable preschool. It's an exceptional preschool. Everyone loves it. It's well known across the community as a place where people are really proud to have their children. To have a diverse group of socioeconomic and ethnic groups and cultural groups is such an essential part of creating a really safe environment and to bridge the gaps that we all feel frequently in our community when we're not close to each other. So I just really hope that you guys will look further into the budget and find ways to make the gap, to bridge the gap that is not putting our children at risk and are really the heart of our community at risk is the families who are here. And so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep. Michael G. I'm a resident on Park Avenue for the last 3 years. I've got kids spanning infant at ECDC to a high school senior who just graduated. So I kind of am very familiar with your, start to finish kind of end-to-end view of things. So I will say this, that ECDC is kind of like your feeder system, right? Location-wise, very close to what we just built at ECCL. So, as I've talked to some parents, I have a kindergartner that just is going into first grade at ECCL, and a lot of her peer group within ECDC, they chose to go to other schools, either in Alameda, private schools, just choose in Berkeley. So from my perspective, you ought to think about how you bring the rest of the Emeryville schools up to the same level as ECDC, because it is your one shining star, in the whole in the whole system. That's just my observation, because you have a waiting list. You've heard from other parents. You've got waiting lists. We had to wait for our 13-month-old, 6 months to get into that spot, and I think that's really, a tribute to the staff and the parents that make that work. So very much, why would you want to take away from something that's one of your shining spots? Just from a perspective, I've got a background in consulting, so I'm used to trying to give advice on other people's nickel or time. But the perspective of if I look at some of the other services that are adjacent to ECDC's like open when the schools are closed. They're open when your swimming pools are closed. So I think it's, the city's responsibility or mission is to provide services to the citizens, and you might want to think about balancing that across your residents, your businesses. Obviously, the businesses bring in taxes, so that's an important dimension. But I would just say that ECDC, just from its core, I get there at 7:40, 7:30. They're always there. They're always responsive. They handle things in a very professional way. So, I don't think outsourcing is your first best alternative. Okay, so thank you very much.
All right, Catherine Furpo ceded her time to Amber Evans. Do we have Amber?
And I will be speaking with the union after the teachers have spoken.
Okay. Great. I got a couple more cards. Maru and Ruth coming up.
Well, you're going to speak. Hello, Ruth Major. So I'm going to just start off agreeing with Brian. Yes, we've been here before. We've looked at this before. So what does this community of families, economists, development psychologists, sociologists, statisticians, neuroscientists know about quality early care? They know it's a good thing. They know that not only does it support community, but it helps families, helps children with their social and emotional development. It's a feeder into our schools. There's more than just the economical gain to be made. There's so many things that are invisible unless you start peeling off the layers and start looking about what does a city childcare look like? What does it do for a community? What happens when you remove it? And yes, it costs money, but guess what? Childcare costs money. It does. It's been a national discussion or non-discussion for a very long time. And I think what makes the city of Emeryville a place that you can be passionate about, a place that you want to live in, a place that you want to stay up on Tuesday nights and attend meetings or be behind the dais, are things like the centre. It's an important part of the character, it's an important part of the support systems of Emeryville. And we need to find other ways to find the money. And yes, I know that's a really hard place to be, trying to find out where to find the money. But there was a time when the large businesses in this town supported the childcare centre. And I think we need to go back to the large businesses and ask them to play their part in building the community here. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. Meeru Desai speaking here as the SEIU Emeryville chapter president. A couple of housekeeping things first. My members are going to be speaking. I request that you let them speak in the order that we like, because we have a presentation that has certain amount of continuity. Is that okay?
Yes.
They will line up after me.
Real quick, I've got 3 other parent cards that were out of the room at the time. Do you want them to go first, or you want the union thing to go first?
I think I would prefer the parents, just because they are here with children, if that is okay.
Yeah. Let me call them and see if anyone came back in the room. Carissa Justice, Pamela Pugh, or Ben Shirey? Anyone come back in the room? Going once, going twice. Floor is yours.
So continuing on, so that was my first request. They will just line up as I'm about to finish. The second request is I do have speaker cards from them. There'll be 9 speakers, but the cards I have are 11. I request 3 speakers are ceding their time to me, to Samantha Golden, and to Amber Evans, if that is okay with you.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now I start my presentation. Good evening again. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for meeting me on a one-to-one and having a discussion with me. I would in particular like to thank Vice Mayor Borders for a very important thing, releasing this memo, which was part of the staff report but was not attached to it, and it was supposed to be presented today on the podium. I thank you again for facilitating that. I appreciate that, and I know my members appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So on to what we are doing here. Last year, your colleague and former council member Ruth Atkins remarked when you passed the budget, the 2-year budget, that this is one of the greatest expansion of staff in the history of Emeryville. There was about 14 to 16 new positions that were added. A year later, we are facing now the biggest contraction of staffing. This memo, if you add up the reduction of the FTEs, of 47 FTEs, 47 people, and our staffing, city staff is about 150. That's about a third. Folks, that is a huge contraction. How did we get here? I don't want to get into that. I want to move forward. But it is important to not forget where and how we have gotten here. In terms of presentation, we are going to divide ourselves into 3 basically segments. First, you will hear from the teachers from CDC. They will talk to you about the quality of care and options for the budget. This will be followed by the police. There's the sworn police union, and then we have SEIU members who are non-sworn. Dispatch is one of them. Crime analyst. There are at least 13 positions on this chart that affect your critical services. These folks respond to your 911 call. This is a critical service that needs to be maintained, and we have put this out there for outsourcing without any information. How many cities have done this? This is an unassessed risk without, these are not just bodies. Do we have any evidence whether this will indeed save us money? You heard the chief, this is the ballpark. Where is the evidence? I want to see. And I would wish that you as decision makers should also see before you just, chop the board and move on. The third person will talk to you about what the union thinks that, where can you find the money? Ultimately, that's the bottom line, isn't it, folks? Where is the money? Show me the money. So she is going to give our proposal of finding the revenues. With that, I'd just like to reiterate one last statement, which is in the letter that I gave emailed to you earlier this morning, and that is this. What you are presented here today is an initial proposal, no less, I understand that, but an initial proposal that lacks finely tuned policy options, provides no creative solution to the problems, and takes on unassessed risks in outsourcing and reduced staff levels while attempting to balance the budget on the backs of the lowest paid staff members. Of 95% of the folks who are going to get slotted for removal or elimination or contracting out are 95% are people, women of color. I just want to leave that to you with that thought in your mind. And in terms of your liberal agenda for the whole city, you've got to keep your house clean before you can allow the community to reap the benefits of your progressive agenda. So with that, I will hand over to Sam. And if all the teachers and the PSTs, if you can start lining up behind her, that would be great. I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Maria.
Good evening. My name is Samantha Golden, and I was hired as the office assistant at ECDC in November of 2014. Some of my duties include enrolling both full fee and subsidized families, managing the wait list, keeping up with all the state required reports, processing incoming invoices to various vendors, ordering supplies, and managing the classroom budgets. I'm in a unique position here where I'm privy to both the interpersonal side of ECDC, where I come in contact with both the parents and the teachers, and I also get to see the other side because I work closely with the budget. Not only that, but I'm also a parent of a 14-month-old student at ECDC. There are many issues that need to be addressed at ECDC as I see it. Since starting in November 2014, I have seen 3 sets of management teams. The first 2 management teams I worked with did not have the proper background and experience to run a program like ours, and they were consequently terminated. Susan Stevenson and Lois Porter are the first team I've worked with who hold an expertise in the early childhood development field, and the improvements in care so far are palpable. Since they began, we have been taken off probation with licensing and returned to good standing. And as recent as today, we had a visit from a licensing analyst who commented on how many improvements she saw in the environment since she last visited over a year ago. Because there's not been leadership in place for more than a year since I've started, it has been my experience that by the time the managers settle in and get comfortable with the day-to-day operations, they get fired, leaving no time to get to the real issues, including budget. As I mentioned, Lois and Susan have taken huge strides to improve our standing with licensing, a feat in itself, and now they're able to start looking at other areas more critically. One of my responsibilities is to manage our spending budget. Since returning from maternity leave in September 2016, I have been the sole person who purchases supplies. Every month I print out a copy of our year-to-date expenditures so I can see where we are in relation to our annual budget. As we stand right now, we have had a 35% decrease in spending in our supplies since the fiscal year 15-16. That comes to $56,000. And it just shows how when you're in a stable environment, you can make big changes. In addition, in 15-16, we spent $48,000 on temporary staffing, and since Susan started in July 26 as our consultant, we have spent nothing on temps. She and Lois have been able to work out the staffing, so we are self-sustaining in coverage. Since hearing the city is considering closing ECDC as part of budget cutbacks, I've done my own research with the information available to me, and I've come to the conclusion that with a 2% increase in infant fees to $1,900 a month, and if we increase the preschool tuition 10% to $1,500 a month, we would bring in a revenue of $1,550,000 in tuition. Based on our costs for the last 2 years, which come to about $2 million, this leaves a deficit of less than $500,000 that the city would have to subsidize, which is in contrast to the $1 million number that we have heard thrown around. Finally, I would just like to remind you that we are a community service. Services are not just leeches on budgets. Services provide important functions to communities. Services have intrinsic value that may exceed their financial viability. We at ECDC supply one of the most important, valuable services, creating a safe and nurturing environment to our most vulnerable asset, our children. ECDC is not just a line item on your budget. We are a community of over 200 people. And to give you some numbers, of our 80 students, 31 are residents of Emeryville, another 27 have parents who are employed at Emeryville, 9 are both. We have 30 students who have been there over 2 years. We have 8 students who are siblings of prior students, and we have another 8 children who are family or children of current and former staff members. So with that, I'd like to just say, please consider all of this in your decision making and realize that with the proper leadership that we now have in place, and if they're given at least 1 year to show that they can organize the center and do a better job, I think that we could show you that we would not be the liability that you see us as. So thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council. My name is Veronica, and I am a proud teacher at the Emeryville Child Development Center. Tonight, I'd like to start there with the word Emeryville. The City of Emeryville voted to become a sanctuary city for illegal immigrants, which I applaud, but in the next breath feels it is necessary to cut out a service designed and dedicated to the children and families of its community and neighboring communities. These actions are extremely contradictory, and these actions show the community members that their families and children are not important to the city they chose to make their home. Child. In front of you, in front of you are a lot of papers with numbers, figures, dollar signs, and I implore you to remember all of those faces that were in this room, the families who came here today to fight for their children. They are not numbers. They are people. Their children are bright, brilliant human beings with heartbeats, inquisitive minds, and bellies full of laughter. And some of you heard really good lung capacity. It is an honor to walk in to ECDC every day knowing that we have the precious task of facilitating and fostering their development. Children are not numbers and should not be treated as such. Children aren't allowed to be children forever, and we are so blessed to be the ones to allow them to be children when they are in our care. As a city, that's something to take pride in. Development. From birth to age of 5, the most critical development is happening in a child's brain. We do not just stand by and watch that happen. We are not just teachers. Ladies and gentlemen, we are brain architects, and we are very proud to work with the families in partnership to create the most successful, thriving environment for their children. We take pride in being able to help lay the foundation for their lifelong journey of learning. When children attend quality preschools like ECDC, they are less likely to drop out of high school.
Okay, now you have to give the next person their 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Hi. Okay, so my name is Sherry Hughes. I'm proud to say I worked with Emeryville Police Department for over 18 years. I'm just one part of a unique group. Obviously, we all can't be here because we are that critical. Somebody always has to be in the dispatch center. So most of us have been here for over 10 years, some all the way up to almost 30. We have a lot of experience. We're trained throughout different things in the department, and we're a crucial component to the department. Not only to the department and the city, but most importantly to our residents. They're our priority. If Emeryville makes the mistake of contracting out services, residents will no longer have, or will have longer 911 queue times. So that means, say somebody gets robbed at gunpoint, they dial 911, they're going to hear a ring and a ring and a ring until somebody in another city answers the phone. Here in Emeryville dispatchers answer on the 911 on the first ring. And we stay on the line with our residents until our officers get there. So we make sure they feel secure and they're in a safe area. And we continue to update the officers until they get there. Contracting out dispatch services means that they'll lose 24 hours support. That means our officers will have to share airtime, radio airtime with other cities. So say another city is talking or running a person out to find out if they have warrants, and an officer has an emergency here in Emeryville, you have to wait for them to finish on the air before they can speak. That's not putting our officers first, and it's not considering our officers' safety. It's not in the best interest of our residents. Emeryville police officers and residents, they're our priority. Doesn't matter, you know, what they're running, if they're running plates, anything, we answer them right away. They don't have to compete with other agencies. Emeryville dispatchers, we do a variety of duties. Okay,
now you've done your 2 minutes.
Okay, so just realize that we do a lot of other duties besides just answering the phone and sending officers. We do things that also make funds for the city. Thank you,
Sherry.
Hi, my name is Latia Moore. I'm with the Emeryville Police Department.
Could you get a little closer to the mic so we can hear you?
Oh, that's the first time somebody's actually said that. Yes, so I've been here for 11 years as a police service dispatcher and a police service traffic technician. And a lot of people don't know what we actually do, so we're often invisible and often thought of as expendable. And I want to tell you mostly because people actually really don't know what we do there. We're more than just answering the phones. We do a lot more than that. We are there for the front counter for people to come up and ask us any questions, and they do. They call us often for a lot of things, and we are there to answer their calls at every anything they want to know, they call us and ask us for it. And we are there for that. And if you decide to outsource that, I'm kind of confused on that, because you're slowly turning the city into Oakland. And if you want to know what that's like, you can actually go and talk to people who live on the border of Emeryville and Oakland to find it out. We provide a lot of services for this city. We care about this city, and a lot of our dispatchers have been here long enough, and then the longevity here. As you can see, we've been here 10 plus years. We also just hired 2 new dispatchers who have been here a total of 3 months, and now you guys are deciding to get rid of them, and of course, a couple of months, it just doesn't make sense. We are here to provide service, and we care about this place. If you outsource us, yeah, we are here to save our jobs. Of course we are, but you're also not taking into account the people who live here. They like us being here, they want us to be here, and all of you, I'm pretty sure, should also want us to be here, along with the police. If you outsource to other people, say to Kelco County, they become another channel. They're not, thank you, but they become another channel, and they are not important to anybody else in the city of Emeryville, and you should want that.
Thank you, Atia.
Hello, my name is Duchess Bouzet, and I am a police dispatcher, and I've been employed by the city of Emeryville for 29 years. I'll be going on 30 years in January of 2018. And I've had the opportunity to not only work in dispatch, but also to work in professional services. I've been a background investigator. I've been the notary for the police department, just to name a few. We've done a lot. We do a lot of things for the department, like Tia said. We're just not answering the phone, but we help people at the front counter. People do call us, and it's not a police matter, but they know that if they call 911, they're going to get someone on the phone. And so oftentimes when the public call us, we're the first voice that they hear. And so it's up to us to reassure them, especially if they're victims of a crime, which is normally that's what people are calling the police for, unfortunately. They become victims of a crime. So I have to say that when I heard that there was the possibility of us being outsourced after working for the city for 29 years, I felt like I had been kicked in the stomach. And it was like, I just can't even fathom that. And I understand, like people have said, you have a budget, you have to cut places. You know, I get that. 10%, it seems like a lot, but I don't know, I don't do numbers. That's up for you guys to kind of figure out. But I like what I do, and I think I'm good at what I do. And with the dispatchers that we have over 100 years of dispatch experience. And that there's no way you can deal with that. I mean, 100 years of dispatch experience, and not trying to say anything negative about another police department in terms of their dispatch services, but Oakland is extremely busy. And if you decide to contract, I'm assuming with Alameda County, that's a whole nother subject all in itself. We care about our officers. We know our officers on a first name basis, and officer safety is very important to us, as well as safety for the residents as well. So when you think about possibly outsourcing, just think about what services, police services, that you feel that the residents deserve.
Okay,
and I would think very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Duchess.
Good evening. My name is Adrienne Robinson. I'm the crime analyst for the police department. I've been employed for about almost 28 years in August. So in 1989, I decided to choose law enforcement as my career path. I started in dispatch and rotated to crime analysis. That's where I've been for the past 26 years. As such, I've had many opportunities to wear different hats while serving as an analyst. I was a background investigator, a crisis negotiator. I cross-trained in property and evidence and filled in dispatch from time to time after I rotated out. When I saw the memo, it was as if someone knocked the wind out of me, because my livelihood was being threatened. So now, how did we arrive to such a dramatic or drastic measure to cut numerous positions when there isn't a recession right now and we have a healthy reserve? What happened? So in 2008, we had a recession. We had things going through the tubes, the housing market and everything. But at that time, we didn't cut any positions. We didn't even do any work furloughs. So how come we are way up here to get rid of over 40 people and not starting somewhere down here looking at other avenues to resolve the budget? So, and when I read that I would be replaced by a CAT system, well, what is that? It's a computer. You're going to need somebody to operate that computer with a level of expertise and training in crime analysis so that we would know how to deploy our officers where there are hot spots. We know how to identify a pattern in a series. A computer cannot do that by itself. You have to read reports to say, well, when all of these cars were broken into, 10 of them had their rear seats pulled forward, while the other ones were just window smashes where the suspect reached in and grabbed the loss. So there's two different patterns right there. A computer is not going to tell me if it's the same person doing it over and over. That's something that a human has to look at. And I don't think the chief would have time to do that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I believe I have 6 minutes. Oh, 6? Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm Amber Evans, a Community Development Coordinator for Emeryville. By doing 4 things, I've added that one that was discussed tonight, we can balance the budget without staff costs, as on this program, and without the program and service costs. We can reallocate what in redevelopment nomenclature is known as boomerang funds. These are the portion of tax revenue on our property that previously went to just the redevelopment agency are now spread through all the taxing entities, and you've made a policy decision to place that in capital development. Because of the loss of redevelopment funds, now we're having a crisis of operations. Let's think about that policy decision, bring those funds, which are ongoing, not one-time funds, but ongoing property tax revenue, to our operating costs. Match staffing to capital expectations. Staff are the asset just as these buildings are assets. We serve the community and we build these programs and we build these buildings. Assume interest on the reserves that through policy decisions you're keeping in place. You don't draw down those reserve funds in any of these policy decisions, so where's that interest going? The interest that is previously on the budget is equal to a grant that I spent many hours trying to get for our operating funds. Let's not discount 3 people by $400,000 of interest that's coming off of our reserves. And in fact, we could use our reserve funds to fund initiatives for additional revenue. Maybe we don't want to spend down any of our reserves because we're not in a crisis. There's no recession out there. This is a mess of our own making. So why don't we use our reserves one time to do some of the initiatives you had presented to you earlier? Additionally, the PERS reserve being used now for the PERS impacts felt in this current year is a prudent use of them, while we look at additional strategies to build new revenue. And just tonight, by talking to the people who run your child care development center, you heard of another $500,000. That's more than enough for this year's proposed cuts, and it gives us a year to consider what we can raise so that we can address the much larger shortfall in fiscal year following. Together, these balance this year and give us time for next year. They validate the investment of time, energy, and resources just made in hiring staff to meet long-standing community commitments like the Art Center, remember, and new commitments just made in a large, powerful session with small businesses. If you want to keep your commitment, we need to look at additional strategies. We stand to lose the cultural district, art districts, that by eliminating the staff, just as we're being considered for a finalist. We made careful decisions about priorities in the last year, and now we're backing away from them. Well, I recently heard Brian Stevenson, a renowned civil rights lawyer, And what he said basically was, we seek efficiency by maximizing benefit and minimizing costs. But we rarely remember to think about who will pay those costs and who will accrue the benefits. The budget alternatives considered tonight disproportionately affect the black and brown employees of the city of Emeryville, those paid the least and the most vulnerable, to carry the burden of an unbalanced budget that is not of their making. It is particularly ironic with the council's recent enactment of Fair Work Week, minimum wage, that as the city is considering the first layoffs a response to rising costs, we are modeling just what we don't want businesses to do: lay off the most vulnerable population to address the rising costs. If privatizing dispatchers would save $1 million, well, then that appears that the wage reduction and benefits to workers is about $1 million. Rather, we, the SUI membership across City Hall, Police, and ECDC, propose the budget be balanced not on the backs of the most vulnerable, but on sound policy decisions to reallocate residual tax increment, those boomerang funds I was talking about, at a higher percentage than currently set at. So taking some money out of capital projects and putting it into operations. These boomerang contributions will balance the pace of development with available staffing. We're a small staff, putting a lot of money into capital when we can't staff those programs, like the Art Center, isn't going to work. Rather than throwing away your investment in people, invest in those 16 positions that you just so carefully spent money, time, resources, thinking, prioritization, and hiring. Childcare is the infrastructure. I'm in community development. It's the infrastructure of employment and job seekers. We need to think about that as part of our integrated locations. And I think that using the economic dislocation reserve for investment in new revenues, both capital or staff, will strategically leverage funds to position us for cities far greater than crises far greater than those of our own making. And thank you. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is André Carpio, and I'm not emotional about any of the issue. My specialty is efficiency, transportation efficiency, and I'm often one of the lonely rider in one of those buses that goes all over town there. And so there is something new that is happening the last couple of years, and this is the owner-driver transportation like Uber, Lyft, and all that. And if you go down to the mathematics of the unit of transportation by the time and the distance there, you could see that the Uber will be very, very efficient compared to the amount of buses that we have invested millions of dollars, and the wages of the driver, and the downtime, and that they are not transporting what they're supposed to be. I'm not saying cutting the merry-go-round completely, but in between the busier hour in the morning and in the evening there, having the service of Uber would be very smart, and then you can have money for the child care center. Thank you.
Anyone else to speak on these items? Okay, thank you. So that I guess that concludes our study session. And
are we going to have a discussion? We got to talk now.
Okay, we're going to talk.
Mayor Donahue, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I do have the information that Councilmember Pats asked for about the grants.
Yes.
Townsend got for us. Would you like to hear that now?
Yeah, this is a good time to hear it.
Okay. Is Nicolo DeLuca here? Okay. Nicolo can elaborate on this, but I can just tell you that since the year 2008, Townsend has successfully gotten 9 grants for the city that total $4,396,311. They've also participated, or actually taken the lead on keeping their finger on the pulse of what's going on in the state legislature and in the state governments, so that they can alert us to grants when they become available, and they can also help to actually craft the grant programs so that they are the most advantageous to us. And perhaps Mr. DeLuca can elaborate.
Absolutely. Mayor, members of the City Council, Nicolo DeLuca, Townsend Public Affairs. We had the pleasure of working with the city since 2008. We do a lot for the city. I'd say specifically state legislation and advocacy work, federal advocacy work, and also grant support. And I understand you had a question. I was in the back. Specifically for grants, it's not identifying a funding source. What we really do is work closely with the city, taking the lead. We've worked closely with Ms. Amber Evans and others, and we identify what we're going to work on. And so we work with the city. What we start doing is drafting the application, working with the state agency or the federal agency. What do you want to see funded? What are some of your sweet spots? Putting data together, helping craft everything, submitting the application, and then working on a full-on advocacy plan to secure those funds. In addition to that, and that's the 4.3 since 2008. In addition to that, we also work on, and we pride ourselves on, creating new funding sources. The park bond is legislation right now that's in Sacramento, making sure that Emeryville is covered, and it would rank very high in some of those applications. In addition to that is RM3, Regional Measure 3, the Bay Area toll increase. So we really don't say no to anything, and our scope specifically for the city is state legislation, federal legislation, and grants.
What was the year for the grants going back to?
Back to 2008.
So it's about $430,000 a year if you do the...
I would just add that today, AB 932, a bill we took a position on related to expediting permanent supportive housing and homeless shelters, Townsend successfully had us amended into the bill as we requested.
So if there's any other questions, I'll be hanging out in the back. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicolo.
I just wanted to say that strategizing over time how we can balance the budget is something we need to do. Rash cutting doesn't seem to make sense. We have to think about and make decisions that we've really considered and are thoughtful. Otherwise, we're over the long haul, we're not making the right decisions for our residents and our city. So I think we have to be careful, and we have to be thoughtful about how we do it.
Because I had a potential conflict of interest that was recently ruled on by the FEPC to not be a conflict of interest, it's really my first time engaging in a discussion around these matters. And so to let my fellow council members as well as the community know my position on some of these things, I vehemently oppose shutting down the ECDC. I think that is a core service in our community, and I think we need to find another way. I think we need to get creative, and I think we need to have a staff report that shows us other options.
I want to acknowledge and thank everyone who came to speak today. It was really important testimony to hear the values of our community. And my request to staff is to take a serious look at the suggestions from the SEIU letter, as also enumerated by Amber Evans, about reallocating the residual tax increment boomerang funds, looking at the interest for our reserves, and the additional 2 points, using the PERS reserve to address current PERS impacts, and taking another look at the budget of ECDC for the following year.
This is one of those evenings where I struggle to keep my emotions in check. I think some things were said by fellow council members that I appreciate. I agree it's not the time to make rash decisions, and vehemently does not quite capture how I feel about closing the ECDC. I think when I ran for this seat, people asked me often why, and one of the things I told them is because I knew the moment Jack Asher was off city council, the first thing on the chopping block would be ECDC. And I hate being right because I'm a pessimist, and I can tell you that what do we have on the chopping block but ECDC? Somebody mentioned when they say they live in Emeryville, people go, oh, do you live at IKEA? I want to point out IKEA has childcare. They understand what families need and what families want. So, you know, I take these things very, very seriously. I also am very upset at this budget proposal. I agree with what Mr. Carver says, and that pains me a little bit to say out loud, but I don't like the process. This wasn't council-driven. This was a staff-driven sort of, let's get rid of ECDC, and that bothers me to no end. I would like to not just say, well, let's pass the buck on this. City Council has been saying for a long time to staff, ECDC is a vital service to this town. It is something that this town that does not have its own fire, we contract out for, that has a ton of managers and people that we contract out to do our jobs that we want to have in town. We need to tell staff as a city council that ECDC is a third rail. You look to cut it, we're going to look to cut you. Okay? I'm tired of this idea that we keep coming back to something that council after council has told staff. ECDC is an important service. It is not only what we serve families with in town, and we know child care is what helps close achievement gaps. Child services are what help change inequities in our society. But it is also, as was said very eloquently by SEIU, it is predominantly women of color that we are looking to cut. I'm also upset that the very first thing on the list was City Council. Oh, let's cut our trips. I get a salary for being up here. I need that salary to pay my mortgage. I'm a lowly educator. But that should always be the first thing up here, is let me feel the pain of the rest of the employees in town. I had calls today, and I had emails, and I think if I didn't get back to a parent's email, I apologize. I tried to respond to all of them, but two things happened in my world. A neighbor has moved, and the reason that neighbor has moved, I can't say for certain, but I can tell you, most likely it's because his spouse is pregnant, and so they're moving to a more family-friendly area with schools. I can tell you I got a call from a family that has moved out of town because of the schools and other unfamily-friendly issues. And the first thing they said to me is, I want to make it clear, ECDC was an amazing experience for both of my children, and now that they're in high-performing schools, that experience has them at the head of their class. He asked me to share that, and I said I would. And so I want to throw out there, one of the other things is we hit ECDC's budget with a lot of things that aren't fair to them. We have a 22% charge for workers' comp. Now, I've worked in child care, I've had a child, and yes, injuries occur when you are working in a physical job, but there is no reason that we are hitting them with twice as much of a charge for workers' comp as we are PD, which is the other place that people do dangerous work and get injuries. Okay? The way insurance work is you spread that cost across all members of that insured group so that the high-risk people are more manageable than the low-risk people. It's a health insurance model. I don't know why people don't understand that, but if you charge only people with pre-existing conditions or likely to need the health care, it becomes unmanageable and they can't have it, and so we get moments like this where it shows a hugely inflated budget. I've got to stop ranting. Thank you. Okay. I want to start by recognizing someone. So Councilmember Medina and I do very similar work to what we kind of saw this evening. We work as organizers, and I as a lobbyist in particular, and we go to public hearings for a living, and we turn people out to speak for themselves. And I think it would be very inappropriate of me to not recognize Maru for what you did this evening. The organization you have, the advocacy you did was phenomenal. Every member of your union should thank you, seriously. I also want to thank every person who came out and shared their personal position, story, reason why you work here. And I think staff has already heard from a majority of council a lot about ECDC already. So I want to use my time very prudently and speak briefly about a different topic we haven't talked a little bit about. Police service often gets beaten back as the big ticket item in the room, the thing that can be expendable. We spent a lot of time here talking about childcare, and I understand why, and my comments aren't to diminish that, but people move to communities, businesses open businesses in communities because the community delivers on public safety. And I am very reticent to approve any budget that would compromise or undermine this city's standing as a leader in public safety. We have a phenomenal crew of people. And so, Duchess, you said, I think I'm good at my job. Honey, you are very good at your job. Okay? As are every single person who works at EPD. And that is not, this was an exercise that was asked of every department head. So I want to be very clear that we need to be careful to not pit management against staff. We are a family in this community. We need to operate like a family. There is a budget challenge in front of us. I disagree with a couple statements that are made. This budget challenge is not necessarily of our own making. The state has adjusted the state discount rate for PERS. That translates into a much higher obligation for every city. In fact, some cities near us, 30 to 50 million more. Okay? We have to make adjustments. I support what my colleagues have asked, which is for staff to go back and to come up with a new list of alternatives for us to examine that are not people first. I think that's a very clear message we're sending tonight. But I do want us to be very cognizant of the fact that one of the promises I also want us to keep to all of you is that the reward you earn by working in this city for 29, 28, 17, 12 years. That's your pension. And we can't ignore the fact that at the end of the day, whether the state screws the pooch and we are left with a dysfunctional PERS system, it will still be the city's obligation at the end of the day to fund those retirement accounts for people who have served this community. And if we do not have a strategic plan for how to deal with this now, we will fail people later. And I cannot live with that personally. So I'm completely committed to what everyone up here is saying, but we really have to have a plan to do right by everybody, not just today, but for your future.
I just like to say things like we can't necessarily cut our way to reduce our budget without serious consequences. And there's a balance about if you cut police to a certain extent, you then have to have overtime. You can't just have no one available. Overtime costs money. It costs a lot of money. So there's a balance between the services we have to give and overtime costs. And then we have, if people work too much overtime, they get injured more. And there is a right ratio. We can't expect people to work more and more and then have the problem of getting injured because they're just too tired. So there's a balance that we have to achieve. And sometimes we're like a ship. It's on a course and we have to start steering. But it takes time for the ship to actually change course. And that is part of what some of the reserve funds are for. Oh, we have a problem. Well, reserve funds are for a problem. And we can't just spend ourselves into oblivion using reserve funds. No, but reserve funds can help us transition from one state to another. So I appreciate what some of the recommendations that Amber had and that Maru were in your thinking about how we could do this. We have to be very thoughtful how we do this.
I was actually inspired by Christian going passionate on this. I was brief before, and I think I should give some context as to why I feel so strongly about this. I was raised by a single mother who was very young when she had me, and we got extremely lucky. She was able to go to community college and have that fully funded and paid for, then transfer to UC Davis. I was able to live on UC Davis campus, and I won the lottery and got into a private preschool and fully financed Montessori education by the city of Davis. I was able to attend a UC. My mother was the first person in the family to get a college degree. I was able to follow in her footsteps and go to UC Davis myself. My economic success, my family moving from a low income to middle class, was entirely dependent on the city actually providing solid social programs. I also lived in affordable housing, grew up on WIC and welfare. These kind of programs are vital for people moving upwards for economic mobility. And also, if we're going to talk about public safety, cutting early childhood education creates a public safety problem further down the line. That's just, it's terrible logic.
Absolutely.
We should absolutely invest in our children. I talked a lot about affordability during this campaign. I want to put my money where my mouth is. A big part of affordability is making sure people can work and have a safe educational environment to put their kids in. And so I am committed to making sure that we can protect ECDC. I am open to looking at budgetary solutions, them reducing how much subsidy they need. I think it's a great idea and something we should work towards and collaborate. The city's been able to collaborate with them in the past. I don't see why we cannot work towards that in the future, especially now if we're being told we have such strong leadership at that school. If we're going to look at cutting dispatchers, I want to see an extremely, way more thorough study than this about why we should do so. Purple Power, I'm SEIU as well, and I am really reticent to cut public employees unless we have zero other options. I think we have a lot of options in our budget, and we need to not just have a staff report that is all cuts. I agree with the mayor on that. So I'd like to see us when we reconvene next time with some additional revenues, some things to offset those cuts.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to suggest something. I wasn't going to do this tonight, but if council is interested, since we're clearly moving to a place where there was a lot of people who talked about additional revenues, and I know we had a brief presentation and it was difficult because we had a lot of people with children who we needed to be able to hear this evening. If it's of interest to my colleagues to create an ad hoc committee related to revenue, to work with city staff on this, or whether we would like city staff to take the first stab before we get involved. What do people think?
Well, I think we've sort of gone at this revenue question piecemeal in the past, and maybe a committee is a good idea where we could focus all of the ideas in one place.
Because I'm hearing people want to keep very critical city services, and we obviously, the reality is we're faced with some challenges, and so revenue is a necessity at this point, I think, if we're going to have that discussion. And I think that would probably require some community outreach. That would require some engagement between electeds and staff, electeds and the community. And we can turn it over to staff to do the first stab if we want, or we can be involved in that.
What I like about a committee was an idea I heard today from a mother. She said to me, "Why don't you ask these large businesses? Just go ask them, see if they'll contribute." Novel idea. And I think if we had a committee, we could do that.
How do other people feel?
Well, we do have a budget and governance committee, which
is you and me.
Which is you and me.
Hey, girl.
Which, yeah, if nobody else wants to do that work, we would be a natural committee. I would step aside if someone else were interested. I do think it's a good idea.
I would also note Diane is the liaison to the Economic Development Committee, and I'm the liaison to the Budget Advisory Committee.
Do you guys have it handled?
Yeah, you two with some community members who are motivated. It seemed like you could come up with some.
You want to try that? Are you supportive of that?
I am.
I will be camping for a few days, so I'll be off the grid for 3 days, but otherwise available.
That's okay.
I'll grudge you 3 days.
You know, I really want to second what you're saying about the revenue side. I get it gives me an opportunity to talk about myself, which is my favorite thing. So I moved to Emeryville from Rockridge, and two things attracted my family to Emeryville. One was our low property tax, and the other is having been in Rockridge and having to call 911 and having to deal with Oakland's services is too strong of a word, and having moved here and seeing nice low property tax and quick response times. So if you're telling me I have to give up one of those two things, I'm going to err on the side of giving up my property tax. So I just want to throw that out to you as you guys go to committee.
So one thing I would like to bring up as we're all together, I forgot to bring this up when we were talking about with the revenue presentation, but I understand this is still the same item, so I'm going to bring it up now. But in light of needing different sources of revenue, I want to walk back my stance on soda tax. I still would like to see it happen in Emeryville, and I think it should happen, but I don't think that the point of it in a community of our size is revenue. I think the point of it is health consequences, and I think there are bigger fish to fry. I think that there's an immediate crisis with our staff members that we need to make sure that we're taking care of our own, and that's a tax initiative that I'd like to kick that down the road if my colleagues would acquiesce, and I'm sure that would make the city attorney's office happier and the clerk's office if they don't start any work on that goes undone later.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that. I think we should carefully think of what we're interested in putting on the ballot.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's great. So our direction to staff then?
Do you feel you have enough direction from us?
Yes.
Okay.
And if I may just clarify, what Vice Mayor Bowders proposed was that you create an ad hoc committee to work on revenue generation, and it's going to be you and Councilmember Martinez and...
Right. It'll be us to start, and we will, if council's receptive to us, if we determine there's other people in the community to bring into those meetings, are you okay with us doing that without coming back?
Yeah.
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay. We're already also working on cannabis, and we've been talking about cannabis revenue, so this may fit into something we've already been discussing among ourselves. So I just offer that as a reason why it might make sense.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I certainly think that there have been a couple of service areas where it's clear, I think, what the additional work effort needs to be. There are quite a few of them that are that didn't get too much discussion. Should I assume that those are still on the table? I'm not sure how deeply we need to go in terms of other alternatives.
I would say yes, that they're still on the table.
Okay.
Yeah.
We need to see a whole picture.
Yeah.
We can't. There's no way we can just pick and choose anything tonight.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. There were some things on there that were. What's the word I'm looking for? Were cost shifting.
Mm-hmm.
So moving them out of the general fund into other funds. So those sort of things I feel like we should move forward on.
Mm-hmm.
So. City Attorney's got a question.
Mayor and Council, actually a point of clarification regarding the ad hoc committee that you were just discussing. For Brown Act purposes, an ad hoc committee under the Brown Act consists only of the council and not of any folks outside of your staff. So what I was hearing was that
we'll do exactly what you just said.
Thank you.
Make it simple.
Well, the ad hoc committee can consult with stakeholders.
Yes, you can. It's just when you start bringing in other folks and they start becoming part of the decision-making process.
Okay.
But you can certainly consult with folks that you feel are necessary for you, the ad hoc committee, to make your recommendations.
Okay. And Mr. Mayor, regarding the alternative proposal as provided by SEIU, is it the council's desire as it is mine, that we go ahead and delve into the particulars about that proposal, so we understand the assumptions, the math, and things
what's
like
the difference between what we currently have at 25% and then 50%? What would that look like? How much does that yield us?
But specifically to work to get more information about the proposal that we received,
Yes.
to make sure that we understand the underlying assumptions and so on. But to look at alternatives within that.
And what's not included in here is the second look at the ECDC budget. That was mentioned verbally.
I think that was the one that I don't know if I made that clear, but that was the one that I was specifically talking about.
Yeah, it's here. I, for one, yes. Yes? Everyone, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now that concludes the special study session. How about if we take a few-minute break here?